Hi everyone. I hope it seems silly to you that I would post a video on the importance of following instructions. After all, you're an adult college student. It should go without saying that you're expected to follow instructions. But in recent semesters, students' work has begun indicating that they don't always understand that simple concept. Perhaps following instructions isn't necessary in high school these days, or maybe students are so used to being able to do whatever they want that they don't believe there are any consequences to not following instructions. Well, there are consequences to not following instructions in college, and there should be. We're going to spend just a few minutes discussing this important point so that you know what's expected of you and you can do very well in this course. That's what I want for each and every one of you. And if having a video like this one helps, then I'm all for it. Every assignment in every course is assigned for a reason, and every instruction and requirement for that assignment is designed to meet a specific purpose. Professors don't just write the first thing that pops into our heads when we make assignments. We give very careful thought to what we need to assign, what we need to look at in that assignment, and what instructions we have to give to make it possible to look at those factors. Also, we look at every assignment and instruction every semester and revise them based on the results from earlier semesters. Now, believe it or not, one of the factors that we consider is how to design an assignment that will create as little stress for students as possible and still allow us to determine whether they are learning what they need to learn. There isn't a professor at any post-secondary institution that didn't go to college for 6 to 12 years. We know it's not the easy keg party and road trip life portrayed in movies, and we care about the stress you face much more than you might think. Yeah, maybe you don't believe profs care about student workload and stress, and I haven't met every professor in the world. Maybe some of them don't. So let's look at it from a point of view that I know you'll believe. Assignments and requirements create work for professors, and no one in their right mind creates unnecessary work for themselves. Now, there's nothing particularly special about me or this course, but since that's the course I know the best, let's take it as an example. The grading rubrics I use for the two papers are very detailed, as you'll see, because they list everything that I consider in grading. Now, that seems fair to me, because the more you know about what I look at in grading, the better you'll be prepared to do well on the paper, and that's what I want. But because the rubrics are so detailed, it takes me between 1 and 3 hours to grade each paper, and there are generally about 40 students in the course each semester. In order to meet the deadlines that the college sets, by setting the last day the students can withdraw and the date the final grades are due, I have about a week to grade the first paper and about a week to grade the second one. Now, let's think about this. Do you think I would make so many requirements on the papers that I have to spend from 60 to 120 hours in 1 week grading them if I didn't think it was necessary in order for you to learn what you need to learn? Now, I love teaching, but no one creates that type of work for themselves if it isn't absolutely necessary. Most professors will usually explain the reasons behind an assignment or even a specific instruction if you ask them. In this course, I try not to take up a lot of your time explaining my reasons because we have so much to cover and you have to listen to me talk enough as it is. But if you want to know why something is assigned or why an assignment needs to be done a specific way, just email me and ask. I think students have a right to know why they have to do things and why they have to do them in a certain way. And I definitely will be happy to explain my reasoning to you. Oh, and this is important. If you have any suggestions of a way to make an assignment easier for students to complete and still provide me with the information I need, definitely let me know. I'm not here to make students' lives any more difficult and stressful than they already are. So if you can see an easier way to do an assignment, let me know. Not only will I not hold it against you, I'll be grateful for the suggestions, and if I can't do what you suggest, I'll at least explain why. The problem is that failing to follow instructions affects other people. If a student's not following instructions affected only that student's learning, well, I would talk about it only to that student, and I wouldn't post a video like this one for you all to have to watch. But when students don't follow instructions in this course, they create unacceptable situations for the other students in the class, and I just can't allow that. I care about you each as individuals, but that means I have to consider the needs of every individual student in the course. And it's just wrong to allow the actions of a few to affect the many. And that's why I've had to adopt some policies to address those situations. Let's talk about the pre-writing assignments first, particularly the initial research source forms and the scratch outlines for each paper. The initial research source form for paper 1 is due this week. Now, next week, you're going to start gathering and annotating your sources. Obviously, you need to know whether you're working with the right sources, which means you need to get that source form back with comments on it fairly early in the week. And I can make that happen if you guys all follow the instructions for filling out the source form. The information is laid out in a specific way so that I can check it easily and comment on it rather quickly. I provide a video demonstrating exactly how to complete the assignment and fill out the form. And you should really be able to complete the assignment fairly quickly because you don't need to supply a lot of detail. And when we get to the point of doing the scratch outline, you'll see that the same thing is true for that assignment. And for that assignment, I even provide examples from past semesters for you to take a look at. But in recent semesters, I've had students apparently skip watching the videos on how to do the assignments. Instead of those simple formats, they've submitted 2- and 3-page essays instead. Now, that created a lot of unnecessary work for the student. And then when I got the assignment, not only did I have to search for the information that I needed, in a lot of cases, it wasn't even there, probably because the student hadn't watched the video on how to do the source form. That meant that the student ended up spending a lot more time and doing a lot more work and still earning a lower grade. That's terrible for that student, and I felt really bad. But the student did more than that. Since I had to search for the information in that essay, it took longer to grade it, which delayed my getting the graded work back to anyone in the class. Now, no, one student doing that didn't create a problem. But when it got to the point that I was having 3 or 4 students doing it on each assignment, that started delaying getting work back to students. So in other words, the students who made the effort and followed instructions were penalized by those who didn't. And that's just wrong. So I'm changing the way I'm grading pre-writing, and we'll talk about how fairly shortly. Even worse, not following the very basic instructions for the paper makes the paper grades unfair, and considering each paper is worth 40% of your grade, that's really a way of making grading unfair in the class. Now, while the topics we write about and some of the other specifics change each semester, the paper assignment in past semesters has been very similar to our assignment this semester. Students were required to write a paper that was 5 to 7 pages long, plus the works cited page. I assumed college students knew how to count to 5 and knew what the word plus means. I mean, they still teach basic arithmetic in grade school, right? But in a recent semester, and I don't know if this was a coincidence or if students emailed each other or used the student discussion board and decided to do this or how this happened. But 2/3 of the class submitted papers that were only 4 pages plus the works cited page, and some of them were even less than 4 pages. Now, yeah, those papers earned failing grades, but students were allowed to revise them. What that ended up doing was giving those students 2 additional weeks to write the paper. The week I was grading the papers and the week the students are given to revise the papers. Now, how can grades be fair if some students are given 2 additional weeks to complete the work? Well, they can't be fair in that case, and the students who get cheated are the ones who followed instructions and did the work right to begin with. Penalizing the good students, which is most of the students in the class, by the way, well, that's just not something that's going to happen on my watch, so I've established a policy to prevent that, and we're going to talk about that shortly. Now, it's not that my way of doing things is the only way, or the right way, or the best way. But in order for everything to be fair, we all need to be doing projects in the same way. So it's not that my way is the right way in terms of the world at large, but in terms of this course, yeah, it pretty much is. And here's what's going to happen if students don't follow instructions. Pre-writing that completely ignores the instructions will be graded after other students' work has been returned. As I said, and as you will see, there are videos demonstrating exactly how to do the initial research source form and the scratch outlines. And of course, if you have any questions, I encourage, in fact, I beg you to email me and ask for clarification. But any initial research source form or scratch outline that is completed in a way that vastly differs from instructions. I'm not talking about leaving certain information off or leaving a certain space on the initial research source form blank. I'm talking about doing something that is completely different than what was instructed. Won't be graded until all of the others have been graded and returned. If I use that approach, I can make sure that the students who do the work correctly, and that will be the vast majority of you, won't be delayed in getting their papers back or penalized because other students didn't follow instructions. And this is the really important one, and I really need to make sure that you understand this. Papers, paper 1 and paper 2, the 2 major papers, if they're not developed sufficiently to meet the minimum length requirement, I won't make any comments on them. They will earn a 65%, which if you do that on only one paper and the other work in the class is good, means you can still pass the class. And you cannot revise the paper, because the instruction that students ignore on the papers that affects other students is in regard to the paper length and the works cited page. Yes, of course, there are going to be students who need to review materials that have been taught in the course and revise their papers. The reason I accept revisions is because I want to give students who need a little more help every chance possible to succeed. I don't have a problem with that at all. That's what I want to do. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, college students should know how to count to 5, and they should know what the word plus means. So, just to make absolutely sure that everyone understands, let's look at what that means together. When you write your paper, here's what you need to do. You write 1 full page of text in paragraphs, a second full page, a third full page, a fourth full page, and a fifth full page. That's 1, 2, 3, for 5 pages of writing in paragraph form based on information from your sources. You write 5 pages, and then after the 5 pages is the works cited page. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of the paper you've written, and then after the 5th page comes the works cited page. Okay, we all see what that means now? Now, I'm not quite as picky as this slide makes me look. I want 5 pages of well-developed discussion, and differences in how students use language and structure their sentences can create some variance in length without it actually having an impact on the quality of the paper. If a paper is at least 4.5 pages long, plus the works cited page, that's perfectly fine. But having just 1 or 2 lines on page 5, no, that's just not going to cut it. So at the very least, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4.5 pages of written text followed by the works cited page. The works cited page doesn't count as one of the 5 pages that's required for the paper. Okay? Now, since we've gone through what 5 pages plus the works cited page means, and I've even shown you what it looks like, there's no reason any student should be confused about what's expected. I really don't see at this point how a student can fail to meet that requirement because they don't know what it means or through some kind of accident. And that's why that if you turn in a paper that is significantly shorter than 5 pages plus the works cited page, I kind of have to see that as an attempt to buy yourself 2 extra weeks to write the paper. That's not really fair to other students, so I can't let you do that, and that's why the paper will earn a 65% and you can't revise it. Now, I know this sounds kind of harsh, but as I've tried to explain, I'm not trying to be mean. In fact, I know that the vast majority of you are good, hardworking students who do your very best. So these approaches to following instructions are actually designed to protect you and demonstrate respect for the work you do. These approaches are meant as a way of making sure that your work isn't devalued by others who might try to find ways around the system. And we know there are people like that in every walk of life. It's not just students. We all know that. Now, there's no reason to panic at all, though. Okay? You can email me drafts of any homework assignment or paper early and ask me if the assignment is formatted correctly or if the paper is long enough. In fact, I want you to email me drafts of even partially finished work and ask any questions you would like to. I'm here to help you, and I want to help you. It isn't possible to email me too often or too many times. I will work with you individually as much as you will let me, but I know how busy you all are. If you don't email me with questions, I assume you know what you're doing and don't need me to bug you about it. After all, you're adults, and the last thing in the world you need is some professor hovering over you like I'm your mother. So if you do have any questions about this presentation, about whether you're doing an assignment correctly, about whether you're meeting requirements, and certainly if you need instructions clarified. If you have any questions or comments at all, please email me from an account other than Canvas at deborah.oakey@csn.edu. I want to help you, and I also want to make sure that the course is fair and that the hard work you do is respected and treated in the way it deserves to be treated. Being a student isn't easy. You put a lot of work into what you do. And I think that work deserves to be honored. And that's why I have to be a little bit picky about following instructions, because as we've talked about, students who don't follow instructions actually affect other students too. I hope that helps clarify why we're doing things the way we are. And I also hope that this presentation doesn't in any way discourage you or make you feel like that this class is going to be difficult, because it isn't. And that's not the purpose of this presentation at all. I just want to make sure that we all know from the very beginning that it is important to follow instructions. So you have a great day, and we'll talk again soon.